Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Jamaica's Prime Minister confident of winning the fight against crime. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Thursday, 21st September 2023, brought to you in association with our friends at Antillian Group. Details when we return.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all, perils big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so glad to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Welcome back. Jamaica's Prime Minister, we will bring the crime monster under control. CVM Live's Natalia Clark reports.
Jamaica is suffering from an organized crime and violence problem. The obvious truth affirmed by Prime Minister Andrew Holness on Sunday. He says, however, that his administration has steadily increased the budget allotted to crime fighting and is continuously working to degrade the capabilities of gangs. He is describing as unfair, though, the expectation that his administration can resolve in a few years a problem he believes began in the early 2000s.
We have been making the investment. When you look at the JCF today, it is a different JCF than the JCF 10 years ago. We have been increasing the capabilities and the training and the professionalism of our police force. And I give you the commitment that we will bring the crime monster under control.
Statistics from the Jamaica Constabulary Force as of August 26, 2023 shows that there is a 14% decline in serious crimes compared to the comparative period last year. PM Holness adds, however, that the bleeding nation is being aggravated by unscrupulous members of society who are deliberately trying to raise the numbers. Coupled with this, he explains Jamaicans lack the ability to de-escalate conflict, resulting in mounting domestic violence.
It is almost now a feature of our culture and how we interact with each other, that before we try to talk things out, we end up fighting things out. And it often results in the use of fatal violence. So if it's one thing that we have to address as a political party, is the issue of violence. So we have been studying this problem. We have appointed a commission to do it. And you're going to be hearing more about the government literally now. We have a Ministry of National Security. We either will have to have a massive department under that ministry or a ministry itself just to deal with our socio-emotional regulation.
But what exactly will that entail?
That will have to treat with issues to do with family, mental health, things like, access to parks and recreation, how we engage our youngsters and our unattached youth, how we provide for counseling. All of this has to be done and taken on in an instrumental way in order to change the nature of our society.
He was speaking on Sunday at the JLP Central Executive Meeting in Ocho Rios. Natalia Clark for CVM News.
In the meantime, Jamaica's Chief Justice Brian Sykes introduces changes to the judicial selection process. During the swearing-in ceremony for new judges at King's House, Chief Justice Sykes announced significant changes to the screening process for prospective judges. 9 judges who were the first to undergo this revised approach were sworn in on Monday. Kimberly Henry of CVM News filed this report.
Chief Justice Brian Sykes has announced changes in the screening process for new judges. During the swearing-in of judges at King's House this morning, he says there are now 2 additional questions used in the selection process. Here's more.
9 judges who experienced the new approach to the selection process were sworn in at King's House on Monday. The 2 additional questions include the judge's most significant achievement, as well as a question of problem solving. Chief Justice Sykes says the questions are intended to add value to the process by evaluating candidates for more than just legal experience.
So the question then becomes, when you break down your working life into blocks of 3 years, what is the most significant achievement in each of those blocks of years?
He says the focus is now on performance qualification, in which the candidates' work lives would have demonstrated a commitment to hard work and excellence. Chief Justice Sykes says this approach is taken to provide greater insight into the candidates' true character.
Oftentimes when persons are starting out just after law school, the last thing on their mind is, I'm going to be applying to be a Supreme Court judge in 10 years. They want to get themselves established in the profession and so on. And so your character and the characteristics that you have will come out over time. You can't act outside of your character.
President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Patrick Brooks, says the new officers are expected to create a change in the system by becoming substitutes for other judges when they go on vacation.
Unfortunately, a number of the judges who go on vacation have to take work with them, writing judgments and so on. And so I look forward to the day when judges can go off and get the rest and relaxation that vacation is supposed to be.
The total of 9 judges were sworn in, 1 male and 8 females. Kimberly Henry for CBM News.
Over in Guyana, the opposition leader there, Aubrey Norton, has outlined several critical issues that he believes need to be addressed for him to engage in discussions with President Irfan Ali outside of constitutional matters. These issues include discrimination against Afro-Guyanese and the need for clean voters list. HGP's Shamar Aline provides more details.
Opposition leader Aubrey Norton at the weekend did not oppose engaging President Irfan Ali outside of constitutional matters, but proposed that those talks centered around discrimination against Afro-Guyanese, a clean voter list, and biometrics. Speaking on the Caribbean Showtime TV in Toronto, Canada, Norton was asked about the 8 times President Ali claimed he reached out to him. But the opposition leader called the Guyanese head of state disingenuous, explaining that those 8 times were letters pertaining to constitutional appointments.
I am prepared to meet outside of the formal mechanism, but once we are doing that, there are some critical issues to be addressed. One, we have to put the question of discrimination on the agenda. 2, we have to put the question of a clean voters list.
The president and opposition leader met once, which was more than a year ago. In June, letters were exchanged over the appointment of the Public Service Commission.
And those are the issues we are prepared to engage on outside of the constitutional matters. I've made it very clear, on the constitutional matters, I'm prepared to engage.
Late last month, outgoing U.S. Ambassador to Guyana, Sarah Ann Lynch, put brokering talks between the 2 politicians on the table. Still, President Ali brushed aside the offer, noting that Norton can call him anytime and he will speak to him. This has led the Alliance for a Change to call on the 2 leaders to stop with the immature schoolboy behavior. Reporter for HGP Nightly News, Shamar Allen.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick,
in association with our friends at
Antillean Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Special Reserved Police Officer Charles Kublal Singh was killed on Saturday night in Trinidad and his personal pistol and car taken away from him. The incident happened around 8 p.m. at Woodford Street, Curep, a block away from his Jackson Street home. Jensen Lavend of CNC3 News has more on this story.
After telling his family he loved them and would see them soon, Charles Kublal Singh left home and journeyed for just under 3 minutes before he was killed and robbed. Guardian Media retraced the final journey of the police officer who was granted an FUL when he reported that his life was threatened after becoming a witness in a murder case where a senior police officer is currently awaiting trial. When Guardian Media visited Kubla Singh's Jackson Street home, relatives said they were still coming to terms with his killing. They lamented that he was just a block away from home when this incident happened. In a radio interview this morning, National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines condemned Kubla Singh's killing and offered condolences to his family and colleagues.
I want to extend condolences first to his family, I want his community, and I certainly want to extend condolences to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, because they would have lost a brother, a friend, a member, and it traumatizes them too. Not to the point of making them immobilized, but they do feel pain for their brother.
Kubla Singh was a past treasurer of the International Police Association. Speaking with Guardian Media, President of the association, Senior Superintendent Curtis Belford, said Kubla Singh was a dedicated police officer who was on leave since his life came under threat. He said Kubla Singh was hoping to return to the job soon. The two met when Kubla Singh was a security officer and expressed a deep desire on becoming a police officer. Jensen Lavend, CNC3 News.
In the meantime, a date is not yet set for crime talks between the government and the opposition of Trinidad and Tobago. However, opposition MP Dr. Rudal Monilal is promising full disclosure from their side once the talks are concluded. TV6's Renessa Cutting has more.
After receiving official correspondence from the Prime Minister on Saturday, the opposition is at this time formulating a response to the invitation to come together for joint crime discussions.
It will be in the coming day or days or so, but I assure you in a very reasonable and timely manner, the opposition leader will respond and put together her thoughts on this matter. Apart from what Dr. Rowley has pointed out in his letter, I'm sure that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa would have additional issues to raise as to the methodology being suggested by the Prime Minister. What is needed is really political will. What is needed is political management. What is needed sometimes is a new pair of hands, so that we cannot underestimate the importance of political drive, so to speak. And this is why there are cabinet reshuffles time and time again, because new eyes, new hands are needed at difficult times to fight a crisis.
Dr. Monilal is giving an assurance that the opposition will be going to the meeting with an open mind and a mature attitude. But he says there is one issue they will not budge on.
It is really unacceptable and untenable that the Prime Minister in the post-retreat statement chose to maintain his support, his public support for National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines, and I think that is a difficult pill to swallow. What is needed is really political will. What is needed is political management. What is needed sometimes is a new pair of hands, so that we cannot underestimate the importance of political drive, so to speak. And this is why there are cabinet reshuffles time and time again, because new eyes, new hands are needed at difficult times to fight a crisis.
Dr. Monilal says despite the inherent differences, he does believe good can come from the initiative.
We all know the government and opposition cooperated to deal with kidnapping for ransom around 2007, 2008. And let me remind you, in the case of the Financial Intelligence Unit, this is legislation passed by both the UNC and the PNM because it required a special majority in the parliament. We have the record is there again. I don't want to take all morning to read it, where the UNC has participated and voted in about 8 or 10 constitutional bills where we have supported 90% of legislation to fight crime.
The opposition is promising full transparency and disclosure upon conclusion of the talks. Renessa Cutting, TV6 News.
An officer of the Royal Bahamas Police Force who was caught on camera in an altercation with a student to be placed before a tribunal. In the meantime, he's placed on leave until the outcome of the investigations. Cleopatra Murphy of ZNS News reports.
During Tuesday's press conference, Acting Commissioner of Police Lehman Delaveau also shared repercussions for a police sergeant following an investigation into a viral video. The video showed the officer roughing up a CV Bethel student at the mall at Marathon last week, seemingly without provocation.
It was recommended that the police sergeant be placed before the police tribunal. I wish to inform you that this police officer sergeant will be placed before the police tribunal today, sometime today this afternoon, and he will be removed from frontline policing until the completion of this matter.
Seeking to defend the ethics of officers, Delaveau stressed that most officers go beyond the call of duty, while less than 1% act contrary to law.
In many cases, we have placed police officers before the courts or before the internal tribunal. All of these officers, though, like anyone else, is innocent until proven guilty.
In the event an officer abuses power, Delaveau says there is recourse.
If a member of the public feels that their rights have been violated, there's a complaint and corruption branch. We investigate any such matters, and where there's charges, we brought charges against once we're able to prove it.
I'm Cleopatra Murphy.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean.
In the meantime, please follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily regional news and more, in association with our friends at Antillian Group.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's a service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.